One of my closest friends who I work with a lot, he's very macho. He said to me one time, I don't got a single feminine bone in my body. I'm like, damn, cuz. I don't know. I feel like not having a balance in both the masculine and feminine energy, or at least having like, open acceptance of your feminine side can be a little bit dangerous. You might come off a little bit too strong. But like, listen, I always shared my opinion about that sort of thing in older videos, that whole alpha male stuff, the manosphere, right? I do think as a man, there should be several things you do need to maintain. I don't mean to play traditional roles, but maybe it's just me. So like, for example, I'm a very protective type of person. I don't really believe in being in control all the time. What I prefer is making sure I can provide, even if it can't be financially. If I can sort of provide some sort of stability or happiness for myself or someone I'm dating, then I feel like that's a good projection forward. Being financially stable in this economy is something easier said than done, especially if you're trying to be fully independent. This applies to both men and women. So since that applies to both men and women, I don't really consider that as something that makes you a better man just because you got money. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of people who have money, a lot of money, and clearly don't know how to be a man. Does that make someone unlame, right? Does that make you cool now because you have money? It doesn't really change if you don't really have that sort of principles that, you would consider makes you a man, if that makes sense, right? I always felt like these expectations of men and women are rooted from people feeling like this generation is too, quote, soft. But I feel a weird hypocrisy in that at the same time. I mean, you can critique the modern generation for being sensitive, but I think sensitivity was still a big problem back in the day too. Today's version of sensitivity is way different than what it was back then. Like, you got some old man or some old woman saying this generation is soft, right? And they're too sensitive. But y'all were having full-blown spaz attacks when you saw a black guy drinking from a water fountain less than 100 years ago. Y'all were too sensitive. Like, y'all were sensitive about different things too. You critique this generation's sensitivity, but then have your own sensitivity markers that weren't truly justified. People back then, the older generation who critique our generation now, y'all were sensitive about women wearing pants. Literally, not figuratively. If you lived in the 50s, 60s, or 70s, or even before that, whatever, right? It was considered trashy or not feminine for a woman to wear pants. Like literally pants, jeans, anything. People would have full-blown breakdowns about it. Y'all were tweaking over interracial relationships, which some people still do that to this day. You know what I'm saying? Y'all were tweaking about black people going in the same store as you. Like, you mean God can't buy some candy? Like, you know what I'm saying? Y'all were tweaking about rock and roll, saying it would corrupt the youth. Harry Potter was promoting witchcraft. Dungeons and Dragons is satanic. Y'all felt like men crying was weak. Going to therapy was only for, quote, what, quote, crazy people do. And talking about trauma was like the ultimate weakness, right? Y'all also felt like video games directly will turn all kids into killers. I don't know about, you know what I'm saying? Even the moral panics too. People felt like, this one was crazy. I remember learning about this in school too. People felt like back then, sex ed for teenagers would make teenage children more promiscuous. Like, just trying to educate, you know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of these things I listed sound like sensitivity to me. But if I call out the racism, sexism, or inequality, then I'm being too sensitive as a modern generation human being. Then I'm insensitive, then I'm soft, right? We have to understand that what we call sensitivity, it's based on our own ignorance, fear, and social conformity. The things we panic about now, a lot of people won't panic about in 5 to 10 years plus. Just like how this historically is a pattern of the past as well. Like, and what's unfortunate about some of this, or this whole topic in general, is that some parents believe their sensitivity triggers are still appropriate to the modern day and try to push it onto the children. And because of that, now we got people in the modern day who still acting like they living in the 60s. History will always flip the script. And I do want to give a fair perspective about this though. Some of these sensitivities in the past and in modern day both do make sense. Like, one sensitivity or standard in the past that people would freak out about or get really judgmental about was mothers who were working. Working moms were often shamed for abandoning their children, because back then the man was supposed to do all the working and the woman would be stay-at-home moms, right? And if a mom was working rather, people automatically assumed their kids were going to be unnatural, poorly behaved, malnourished, unfed and stuff like that. And, these stereotypes and sensitivities even apply to stay-at-home dads. People mock that often. They say, if you're a stay-at-home dad, you feminine, bro. And you assume the dad was low-key, splitting them cheeks. I don't know, or something like that. But I can see this argument. I can see it in both ways. I can see it can make some sense in terms of how not having a stay-at-home parental figure at least, can impact a child's growth. I do get it. I get what you're going with this, but I'm not saying a mom should never have a job, because in this economy, both parents need to work. But I get why people were freaking out about this stuff. I get why people back then judged others for their lifestyle, or they were sensitive about it. It's just social norm changes and having to adjust. It may be easy to think that our generation is soft and sensitive, but people making the same critique, their time period was also very soft and sensitive. It was just different things going on. You know what I'm saying? We just think that it's 10 times worse now because we're literally living in this era, in the modern day. I'm sure back then, if we lived in that era, we lived in the past, people would think it was the worst thing going on back then. And we were going to be doomed for the future. And now we feel that way about today, because it's always going to happen. I remember listening to this podcast. I remember which one. I don't remember what I was listening to, but I remember someone was like, yo, I would hate to be a vampire because, vampires, they're supposed to live forever, right? And then they said they would also hate to live forever because they would have to listen to people complain about the same things every 10 to 20 years. I completely agree. We always think everything is the worst, then 10 to 20 years later, another thing replaces it. And you really think about it historically, we've been complaining about the same things for the past forever. Just some things just end up fading out. But, usually the same things sort of stick there in a sense. Look, if you're sensitive about people being sensitive, then maybe you're the one being sensitive. I don't know. People change. The climate changes for the better or worse. It's always going to be like that. Such is the nature of humanity. I feel like some people are so caught up on certain changes going on now that they forget to live their own lives. I can't invest my time worrying about everyone else's situation when I need to get my situation right first. I need to do what I can do to make my situation, my life, my family better. I feel like that's the cornerstone of being a man. Working and adjusting through different climates and not allowing it to distract you. People are letting everything distract them with politics, the economy, different social ideologies and whatever. Yo, you can agree or disagree with it. You're allowed to have an opinion, but you still got to do your own thing. People out here don't got $70 in the bank account worried about what the president is saying on TV. Dude, people got a bad whole situation going on, right? You depressed. You got this and that going on, your leg broken, I don't know, everything is something wrong with you in so many different ways, right? You got so many problems going on in your own personal life, but you drooling and you worried about social events and other things that you see online. You know what you say, how people say someone else can't make you happy, you have to make yourself happy first, that sort of thing, that sort of saying, right? I don't know how much I can't agree with that. That'll be a whole other time. I'm going to end up digressing too much, but I feel like that applies for this too, If you in a bad situation, I can't worry about the next guy, does that make sense? I'm not saying these things aren't important, but I can't focus on that right now. Maybe I'm selfish. I don't know. It's just my stance on this. Let me know what you guys think. This episode is found on Spotify and YouTube. I'm out.